How you doing, Dave?
Feel a little scattered, but good. Glad to be here.
I felt like this podcast, because as any listeners of this podcast would note, we've been a little slow in releasing, but we've got a lot going on. And I feel like this was a good, we are going to do this podcast come hell or high water.
That's right. That's, yeah.
My grandmother was moving in down the street from me. I had shoots all day. It just had like a long list of things. And I was like, you know what? We have to talk about MKUltra at some point. And if we keep putting this off, it's now or never. We got to do it.
Nobody's going to find out about it.
Why not now? You know?
No time like the present.
It might not be a perfect episode on MKUltra, but it'll be better than any other MKUltra episode we've done.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Of all the MKUltra episodes that we've done on this Conspiracy Dad podcast, this will be the best one.
Well, welcome to the Conspiracy Dad podcast. Good to have everybody here. My name is Dante, and this is my good friend, Mr. Dave. We are talking today about MKUltra. So, in the conspiracy world, when I'm talking to conspiracy dads, many of us kind of take for granted that we all know what that means. And I don't know if you have this, but there's sometimes moments in conversations with normal people where I'll just say something like an MKUltra, but I have specifically said MKUltra and just assume they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And then after a few minutes, I kind of tell they don't really, they don't grasp the depth of what that means.
I think I mentioned I read Animal Farm recently, and that's one of those books that, like, people use the term Orwellian, and I think a lot of times people just nod and go, yeah, totally Orwellian. But what I found out after referencing Animal Farm more lately, since it's fresh on my mind, is like most people did not read Animal Farm. And then...
Oh, you mean like they even like they're just repeating what somebody else said about Animal Farm?
Or I can tell I can tell by the look on their face, because again, it's fresh on my mind. So like something current will happen and I'll go, that's just like the pigs did in Animal Farm. And then people go, I didn't really.
Did you ever watch the cartoon of Animal Farm?
I watched it in, I think, late grade school, but.
Did you know that was financed by the CIA?
Yes. Yeah. That I think I found out maybe in that Dulles book.
Yeah, I think that was the beginnings of Operation Mockingbird.
I think you're right.
And what they did at that time was they hired like all of the best animators from like Disney and all these, like they really pulled everything in, and it was a great film and a great project. But then after the fact, they realized it was too expensive to do that like to every film.
Oh.
And so then they started switching to like kind of heavily influencing films, but not necessarily bankrolling the entire thing.
That, where I think, like I said, I think it was that Dulles Brothers book that I read, but not
What was
only
the name of the book?
It's just called Brothers, and it's about John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles.
Which the airport is named after John
Foster, yeah.
And the CIA director who probably killed Kennedy
is Alan. Correct. Okay. Yes, that's the
They
younger
wouldn't
brother.
name an airport after you if you...
Nah. They, I wonder if he's mad that there are Kennedy airports, I assume, right? This is JFK.
Yeah,
right.
Kennedy. Well, you got to do that to, like,
Yeah.
Fig leaf.
You can't.
Olive branch. Sorry.
Hey, buddy. Sorry about your dad.
Sorry about your dad.
But the last thing about that Animal Farm movie is the CIA, like you were talking about, not only they bankrolled it, but they changed the story up a little bit. Like at the end, part of the reason that got me to actually go back and read the book is nobody really makes out good in the end in Animal Farm. But they adjust the film. I haven't watched it since I've read the book, but the note in the book is like they made it more like, like more negative about communism than the book even is, to like incite more terror. And I think they even made, and if somebody goes, this isn't how the movie goes, fair enough. I haven't seen it since 5th grade, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the animals kind of rally at the end against the pigs. Whereas in the book, it's just like the bad guys kind of win. It's just the pigs and the rest of the town farmers all drinking beer together. So the pigs just basically become like the people that they led the revolt against in the very beginning of the book. Spoiler alert, if you didn't read Animal Farm.
I actually didn't. We started this conversation by that. Like a lot of people don't. Like I've read sections of Animal Farm. I did watch the cartoon, but like you, it was pretty long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I was a kid at some point.
I didn't mean to get on a tangent, but to your point, MKUltra is one of those phrases that people use in this conspiracy lexicon. Yes. And I think a lot of us, and I've been guilty of this plenty of times, of going like totally like MKUltra.
Well, I think the first time I said MKUltra to you, you probably thought like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like that's MK.
And I understand the reference, like context when people use it, but I thought I've never really I didn't know when it started, didn't know who was involved other than the CIA and Jolly West at some point had something to do with it. But when we were talking about this episode, my thought was, if we're conspiracy dads on the back porch at our kid's birthday party or at a cookout and somebody makes a crack about MKUltra, I'd like for all of us conspiracy dads to be more informed than
on the same page.
Like surface level. Yeah, exactly. So maybe I don't know if you want to lay it out.
Let's roll through. Once you roll through a little bit of background on just, well, there's been lots of books written about it, and you could go deep into, chaos and other, like there's a lot of books about, this subject, but let's just do a big bird's eye view, big picture view of what was MKUltra.
MKUltra, and interject anything you like. The brief synopsis is that was a program that the CIA initiated to, they were searching for mind control drugs, but I mean, any kind of tool that they could control minds with. The CIA got into this idea of like, well, chemical warfare is, useful. And of course, like having large,
and did this all was starting during the Korean War, right?
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, MKUltra specifically kind of came about later, like 50s, early 60s, but the kind of the genesis of it, like the first seed of the idea, you're right, was the Korean War. Really the first catalyst that I heard about was a Catholic. This cardinal was he was a Hungarian cardinal. I'll look his name up real quick.
I've heard of this. I can't remember who you're talking about, but I have heard of it.
He was a cardinal, and he was in Hungary, and he was like politically revolting against the government. And he was so vocal that the government came and arrested him. And then he publicly like came out and said, I was trying to, like, he confessed publicly that he was trying to take the government down. And stateside, our John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles types were like, well, there's no way that guy would have just confessed, under a totalitarian regime. They must have done some kind of, hypnosis on him or something.
That's when the idea of brainwashing.
And the comment I heard when I was learning about this was like, totalitarian regimes, they just beat you senseless until you're willing to admit to anything. And why at that time, we had some guys in a conference room saying, well, it must have been mind control. Instead of like, well, didn't they just interrogate him until he finally just said whatever they wanted him to say? But that's kind of like the very first seedling of the idea of, well, if they got this cardinal to get
kind of thinking, well, maybe there's a way to get in people's heads.
Right.
That's what they started.
Yeah.
Like there must be, maybe because he wasn't beaten to a pulp or something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they must have done something to change his mind.
There's another account, like you were mentioning in the Korean War, of U.S. troops that were taken prisoner. And then
this is Jolly West's story, right?
I don't know. This is what
Manchurian Candidate stuff?
No, what I'm thinking of is these are some of our pilots were taken prisoner, and then they came out publicly and said that the U.S. had been dropping like illegal chemical weapons.
Yeah, that's Jolly West.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
here we go.
So that's kind of where it started, is that yeah, we had POWs coming back saying that we had been committing war crimes, and it must have been, well, they must have brainwashed them to say that. They couldn't possibly have actually seen that. And I think that's where Jolly West came in and started working with some of these POWs to get their story right, kind of thing. Because we wouldn't, there's no way we would use chemical warfare.
Oh, golly.
And I think that it was happening in Oklahoma City. I actually haven't finished all of Tom O'Neill's book, but I've heard that that's what what it goes into.
It's surprising how often Oklahoma and Arkansas and, I mean, places not far from us keep coming up.
Flyover states, yeah.
The Cardinals.
I don't remember all the details of that, but I think that that's where Jolly West came back from the Korean War, and that's kind of what he was like. It was a problem for the United States. Like, all these POWs were saying this, and it was like, send them to be treated by him to not, get their story right. But then that's also where it kind of developed more of this idea of, well, maybe there is a truth serum out there. Maybe there is a way to. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what West was working on, was techniques to implant false memories in someone's mind or to extract real memories. And whether or not he perfected that technique, I mean, it goes all the way up to, Sirhan and Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
A lot of the, like I was telling you, I listened to this Behind the Bastards podcast, which I just discovered, like, searching around for things about MKUltra. And I don't know much about that podcast other than the episodes that I listened to, but they were talking about just kind of like failed parts of the MKUltra experiments where they weren't getting people to tell the truth. They're like, well, maybe if we give them marijuana, that will do it. And, or maybe if we put them on cocaine. And, of course, their comment was like, if you want people to lie more, it might be better to give them cocaine.
Did you watch the Joe Rogan episode where the guy who wrote Blitzed?
Yeah, that's
a good one too. They talk a lot about that.
Yeah, so that is what got me really thinking about that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because the comment on there where the guest, what's his name? The writer.
I can't remember.
Guy that wrote Blitzed.
Blitzed.
German guy.
Yeah. Funny German author.
Yes. He made the comment that that the CIA bought up the world's supply of LSD. And when I heard that, I was like, well, that never gets mentioned in any backyard barbecues. And sure enough, yeah, I mean, like, throughout listening to commentary on some books and everything, like, Germany, they start researching, they're researching lots of stuff, and they kind of happen on to this Aragon chemistry compound that they develop into LSD. And they weren't like setting out to create a mind control drug. They were kind of like a lot of pharmaceutical companies do, I imagine. They're kind of just seeing what chemicals do what to what people. And then, like, if you happen to find one that makes people grow more hair on their head, you're like, great, we just discovered a hair growth drug. And so this LSD one was not like one they were seeking out. They just happened onto it.
And they were doing that there was a lot of drugs. Like, side note, like, his main thing he was talking about was the development of methamphetamine.
That's right.
And I didn't know this, but at the time, there was a pharmaceutical company in Germany called Pervitin, and they basically synthesized methamphetamine into like cute little tablets that they would sell at over the counter to anybody. And because of like trade issues, at that time, they didn't have coffee in Germany. So just pre-World War II in Germany, instead of drinking coffee in the morning, almost everyone was just taking microdoses of methamphetamine, which could explain how things got out of control really quick. If you have like a significant portion of the population reading kind of crazy literature and then also taking methamphetamine at the same time. You could see how that could get out of control.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The echo chamber gets very bouncy very quick.
And then you also see why they're just so damn efficient.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, okay, I understand. If you wake up, pop some meth, and go to work, you're going to get
we're talking
done.
about a culture that is, they're kind of lined up to be efficient anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find this I just take this pill every morning and it makes me even more efficient and orderly.
Like all day.
And then you have a guy in charge who takes a lot of those pills and says, guys, I know how to be the most orderly. And all of a sudden, all the people are like, we want to be the most orderly. So yeah, between that and a lot of bureaucracy, it got
definitely
sideways.
Watch the Joe Rogan episode about the book Blitzed. If I don't know if you can look up the author's name, but he there needs to be a lot more research done, because it definitely sheds a new light on how things maybe got out of control so quick, and definitely drugs played a significant role in the leadership and even the general population, both on our side and their side. We were using, I think, amphetamines. Like, we weren't giving our soldiers methamphetamine, but we were giving them uppers, definitely. You go into battle, you need to be up, you need to be awake.
Yeah.
And when specifically when the Nazis attacked the Russians and how they ran them over so easily, was they were all on meth, and the Russians had no idea what was going on, and these soldiers were fighting for like 3 days straight, and they were just almost like just overwhelmed, and like, how is this even possible?
Norman Ohler is the name of the author.
Norman Ohler. Check him out. Anyway, so he talks a bit though about the development of LSD, and not just America, but other governments finding interest in it to use as maybe some sort of mind control drug.
Yeah. And so with that, they're combining, like, they're dosing people without their knowledge, and then also like seeing like, well, if we dose them and we put images in front of them, will they tell the truth, or how does that affect people, or like
well, back to Tusco.
Yes, that's
that
right.
is that was what they tasked Jolly West with, was using LSD and other techniques, like how not just the drug, like there was lots of research into the psychology of how can we control people's thoughts, how can we brainwash somebody, how can we create a perfect assassin who doesn't know what he's doing, but still kills the president.
That's I mean, that's, like you said, it kind of brings you into that Sirhan territory. Like, it seemed like it wasn't working at all, but then
who was the other CIA doctor that was also like, was kind of behind all of it? Not Jolly West, but it was God, his name escapes me.
Is it not Sidney Gottlieb?
Yeah, Gottlieb. Yeah.
He's like kind of the main, like, it's like Alan Dulles is the one that says, let's do that. Like, he would be like the CEO.
Yeah, but then he's the chemist or whatever. They're like, you figure this out.
You be the actually operations
It's kind of like Steve Jobs making like the iPhones. It's like just pointing at engineers, like, put all the songs into this. Make all the music go out of this.
Yeah, Gottlieb is
Get back to
actually the guy that does it. And this is like, I think we've talked about Operation Paperclip. At least, I don't know if we've done a whole episode on it, but we've
mentioned it. Yeah.
And this is a similar situation where we onboarded German, like, former Nazis, that instead of like sending them to prison, we just recruit them to help us with what we've got going on. I don't know, like, if I'm a Nazi looking at war crime sentencing, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, I think that, it's a really tough call, because I get that there were a lot of American soldiers who knew what was going on with Paperclip and were very not okay with it, because they had just finished fighting a war against these people. But I think that the calculation from the American perspective was, we knew that the Russians hated the Germans and the Germans hated the Russians. And it was an easy calculation to say, look, if it just becomes kind of common knowledge that when this is done, because everyone knew it was going to end, you want to work for the Americans because then you can go to a Yankees game and eat a hot dog, versus if you go to the Russian side, they're going to throw you in a gulag eventually.
Yeah.
I think that's essentially what happened. Now, should they have been put in charge of NASA and like given full reign to do everything? I think that
seems a bit much.
Seems like a mistake. That you could reference back to the Jack Parsons episode if you don't know what we're talking about. But NASA was run by Nazis for a very long time, if not still. I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of the things.
Was that the
I
right
love.
call? I don't know.
No, at face value, certainly not. But I mean, one of my favorite things that I hear from the Martyr Maid guy, Daryl Cooper, is like judging people in history now is not fair. So I'm not going to bat completely like totally they should have hired Nazis. My point is just that we weren't there for the conversation.
Yes.
Is all that I'm saying.
And I think too, like I had a conversation with a gentleman who is, I think he's in his mid 80s. And I was asking him recently that, because of the craziness of what's happening now, I was like, hey, do you just wake up like when you're 40 and you kind of look around and you go like, you just realize how crazy the world is? Or is it really that crazy? And I'm thinking like, it's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, cool as can be. He's like, well, when I was 19 and they shoved me in a plane and I was jumping out of an airplane shooting at Nazis in World War II, I thought that was pretty crazy. And I was like, fair enough.
That's
I think it has been crazier. I think it has been.
That's like my wife's grandmother lives in the Bay Area, and she's grown up in Berkeley like since the early 1900s. And so we're talking like major civil rights movement stuff. And she's like, yeah, Berkeley was like, you could sleep on your front porch at one time, and Oakland, same thing. And she's like, and yeah, it got a little weird in the 60s. Like there was a tank that drove down my road. Like, so, I mean, when you talk to people that have lived through all of this history that we tend to be talking about, it is comforting to know that there have been crazy times.
They are crazy now. That's definitely what's happening and culturally, but it's maybe it's just always been crazy. You have lots of wars all through history. Civil War, that was probably pretty crazy.
Yes.
Get your guns, guys. We're going down south. We're going to whoop some ass. It's like 600,000 later, maybe life is, you just wake up one day and realize it like, oh, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think for the first 40 years, maybe you're just taking a lot of things for granted.
The 80s was pretty chill, right? Anything in the 80s that was...
Well, I mean, like Reagan was president, which, I mean, that makes it less crazy that Trump became president. Because you've got a movie star being a president, which like in Back to the Future.
I just mean like, you did have a period from World War. Well, I don't know. You had Korean War, Vietnam. It's been a pretty steady stream of wars.
Yeah. And we really thought that that Red Scare, I mean, we were really like waiting for the Russians to just parachute right down on us.
Soviet Union was still up. And what was Red Dawn?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of is like, that was a feasible enough storyline that we were like, yeah, that could happen.
Maybe that was Operation Mockingbird in action, keeping us from actually going to war by just fantasizing about going to war.
I doubt they were trying to keep us from going to war, because it seems like ever since the industrial military complex got going, we've been like John Foster Dulles, going back to that book. I mean, we started becoming, our financial elite became more globally aware and like started buying up power companies overseas and like utilities overseas. And we started like not you and me, but like rich people in the U.S. started partnering with the John Foster and the Alan Dulleses of the world to start like getting their, McDonald's on the corners of China, that sort of thing. And with that goes like, you've got these long-term government, like people in power that kind of ensure that we stay in conflict somewhere to keep things going.
That's that Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex.
And so, like it's surprising that there was as much peacetime as there was in the 80s. I don't know if that's because maybe they just thought they couldn't get away with it just being so fresh off of Vietnam.
Still, it's only 10 years, so not that long. But anyway, so back to this topic at hand.
Yeah.
MKUltra was essentially a lot of bad stuff that we did. Like, I don't know the right way to describe it, but operations really, using people, dosing people without their knowledge, setting up, brothels or like places that were like wired with cameras, and then paying the prostitutes to like dose men with LSD and like watching them and studying them and see, hey, what do they do and what is it? And there's actually some really terrifying stories related to that. There's a lot of stories related to it of just, people being abused, also people on the fringes of society being kind of used as research subjects to develop what a lot of people think, and myself included, is that I think this Sirhan was some sort of an MKUltra, and that's what he claims, is that he says that he was some sort of an MKUltra victim, and that he was brainwashed, and that really would be kind of the perfect example of what an MKUltra, whether or not he was MKUltra, that's what they were training people to do, to be like, you could ring a bell or have a woman in a polka dot dress walk by, or there would be some sort of, there's actually, if you watch, look up Derren Brown, is a hypnotist who did he did this whole series where he tried to prove like whether or not you could hypnotize someone to be an assassin. And in that episode, he, spoiler alert, does actually hypnotize someone to unwittingly shoot someone as an assassin. And so I think it's hard for us to wrap our heads around, but there are people who are more susceptible to that kind of influence than others.
Yeah.
I don't know why, it was just their brain wiring or something, but did you find that?
Yeah, I did. I think I found the right thing. It's just called The Assassin with Stephen Fry.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
It's pretty easy to find on YouTube.
Yeah, and it's good. It's entertaining, but it's also...
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, put it in the show notes. It's a good example of like, what is MKUltra? That's what it was. It was to basically create unwitting assassins. And that program ran I think it's still running, but allegedly it stopped in the 1970s when you had the church committee hearings, and there was a congressman named last name Church who basically they kind of blew the lid on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it says, I was right there. Where did it go? Yeah, Wikipedia, but it's basically like right after Watergate, I think that there was a lot of rumblings in Washington and amidst the public, kind of like, well, what else is going on?
Well, and it was admitted to, like, it's not a
I didn't
speculation.
Mean to, I just mean like that was what kind of instigated looking into more things.
MKUltra definitely was a real thing, and the thing that I guess that's what we can discuss now is, did they actually stop the program? Because that's what the CIA would say, is that, well, okay, that was, unethical.
Shame on us.
We won't ever do that again. Which, to me, it's like, well, if it worked, you would absolutely keep doing it. You would stop doing it. You would just change the name.
Well, you're right. And
it's like, yes, you're right. MKUltra is no longer a thing. It's MKUltra 2.0.
Yeah, well, and MKUltra wasn't even that's the name that it ultimately was, but there were a handful of projects prior to it. So kind of to the point you're making, I mean, you've got Artichoke, Naomi, Mockingbird, Ultra, and then whatever it was after that. Like, okay, well,
that's
we
just
can't.
when they got really good.
Yeah, right, exactly. They finally started figuring it out, and then this Watergate thing happens, and you're right. It's the CIA has to kind of go like, you're right, our bad. We won't do that anymore. But sort of like we were talking about off the mic, like how many times when you get caught doing something, do you just hide the cigarettes in a different place in your closet from your parents? You don't you don't stop smoking cigarettes with your buddies.
Well, and I could see if it really worked, that would be a really valuable
And
weapon.
also, and man, also, it's this idea that like you're okay with getting quote unquote caught if you're the CIA, because that does give you a microphone from which to say, yeah, we don't do that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now for the most part, especially like pre-internet, pre-conspiracy dad podcasts, for the most part, people are kind of like, yeah, that was crazy. Can you believe they did that one time?
What do you think they call it now? I mean, I think it does exist, but
yeah, I don't know.
It can't be a name that we know. Like that's the genius of it, is that they let us have the internet and they let us do the podcast and they let you talk about MKUltra.
Well, I'm looking at it on Wikipedia. It's their website.
Wikipedia is literally run out of Langley. So, I mean, it's, they let us feel like we're doing investigations right now. It's like, that's cute.
That's cute.
Those guys think that they're figuring it out. Yeah. And meanwhile, Trump has just been almost assassinated twice by two guys who have no social media footprint, and like every red flag of an MKUltra operative is like,
that's like partly what got me thinking about this too, was some of the more like popular CIA in the public spectrum, like in that Joe Rogan kind of world.
Yeah, what do you think of those guys? Bustamante, Andrew.
I find that
Andrew
Bustamante, I find him likable. Like he's interesting to listen to. I haven't checked out his Everyday Spy podcast, but I'm gonna, so I can learn some neat tricks.
You know about Robert Baer?
No, I don't think I know about him.
He wrote a book. I don't remember the name of it. I've read it a long time ago, but he's another one that probably before Andrew Bustamante came. I think that guys like that are mostly telling the truth, but they're also out there to control the narrative.
That's what I think.
Robert Baer was caught on mic saying something about like he knew the guy who cashed out on 9/11. Like you could look that up, but he's basically saying like, yeah, that was an inside job. We knew about that.
Yeah. Guys like that make like, it's not as strange to me, or it's more strange to me than like Jocko being a Navy SEAL. I mean, it's common knowledge in the U.S. what a Navy SEAL is, what the Navy SEALs do. So it's not like clandestine. So when I hear him talking about being a SEAL, or like David Goggins or somebody going like, here's the protocol for how you make yourself more badass. This is what we did in the SEALs. That all seems pretty straightforward to me. But having like somebody saying, yeah, I was in the CIA, here's how it really works.
It's like,
and then the next thing out of their mouth is usually like, you have to be a little bit okay with lying. And then I'm supposed to believe everything they say right after that. And that reminds me a lot of like, if you're at a bar and a cute girl walks over to you and shows some interest, and you're like, didn't I see you here with your boyfriend last night? Well, I really like you though, and I would never step out on you. And you're like, but I have a hard time believing that now.
Yeah.
So that is, I mean, again, I find them compelling to listen to, but I think that is part of the strategy of the CIA. And I don't pretend to know how they operate, but I think you're right. They let me look on Wikipedia on their little website that says whatever they're okay with it saying, so that I feel like informed enough to get on a microphone. And now I'm spreading out some truth. I'm just
They love us.
This is pretty great for them. And then they're okay with Bustamante capitalizing on the fact that he used to work there, or maybe he still does. I don't know, but the fact is he leads with,
even if he's not getting a paycheck, he's still like, he's still backing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's not a whistleblower.
Right. Yeah. And he's consistent with what I hear other retired CIA type people say on interviews like that. Like, yeah, you got to be, they don't want you to have a lot of connections. You know, like, for instance, like my roots are deep here in Tulsa. You know, like I see my parents every week, and like I've got friends like yourself that I've been with for 20 years, right? So I'm not a good candidate to be a CIA operative. Too many people would be like, has anybody seen Dave lately? But guys like Andrew Bustamante that had like moved around a little bit, no real ties, you know, no like long-term relationships.
Harvey Oswald types, you know what I mean? Jumping all over. You're in Cuba one day, Mexico the next day, Russia the next day.
Exactly.
All with no money, no real finance. It just happened to jump all over the place.
So if that is the, you know, kind of the template for what you start with, so that they can, and they need you to be kind of just open to whatever they want you to do. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility for him to just kind of, he's already been trained up in saying whatever he needs to say to accomplish what he needs to accomplish. I would have a hard time being in a serious long-term relationship with a woman who I found out had been in the CIA. Like, I just can't believe you ever. But, you know, and like Mike Baker is the other guy that you hear on Rogan all the time, seems totally credible to me, like an everyman. But then I'm like, but that's
what they want you to
That would mean he's very good at this. And he's like, I looked it up, just like Google it real fast about a week ago. What does Mike Baker say about MKUltra? And he's like very dismissive on Rogan.
Oh, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. It's exactly. He's,
of course.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a time when they did that, but you can't get away with that anymore. No.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, of course you would do that now. So anyway.
Well, what do you think the possibility, I guess that's the, you know, if you look at the shooter in Pennsylvania and who tried to assassinate Trump, I think I'm violating YouTube terms when I say these things. I can't keep up with it. I don't even care. Part of being a conspiracy dad is just not caring. Right. They might cancel the show, but it's just eerily like, and my Republican friends will like hate that I say this, but like all of the people on the left after the shooting, they're like, you know, oh, it says they were kind of claiming like it's MKUltra or something like that. It was Trump set it up or something like that. And the people on the right, like, how it's ridiculous. People were killed. It's, you know, people were killed. But I cannot get over the fact that when you watch that video, as somebody who would never vote for Biden or Harris, I'm looking at that stage going, there's one person on that stage who doesn't look even slightly afraid of getting shot. And it's Donald Trump. It's like, is it possible that that's a staged thing that like, I don't even know. You can't convince me of that. The only thing that man cared about was getting his shoes. He wasn't concerned at all about bullets whizzing by his head, nicking his ear.
Well,
he was just like, watch the video. He's the only one who's like, I don't care. Now, could just be crazy. I think even egomaniacs, you shoot their ear, they drop their cover immediately, and they duck and they go, get me the heck out of here. The fact that he didn't do that, I'm compelled to say that's odd behavior. I don't know what it means. I don't know if Trump was in on it. I don't know if he's just a victim, but the shooter, that combined with the shooter being, we know nothing about him. Like, it's just like this, you don't know anything about him. And if I'm giving you my conspiracy dad take on it, everything about that screams MKUltra.
Yeah, my initial like knee-jerk reaction, I was with Kokomo when like the news came out that this had happened. And yeah, I went like full tilt conspiracy dad, and I was like, oh, Trump set that up. He had somebody shoot at him. Not long after that, I kept thinking about how difficult it would be to get tagged in the ear with a bullet. I mean, like,
see, I don't think it'd be that difficult.
I think it would be very difficult.
No, you don't have to get, okay, here's how I would do it. Conspiracy dad. If I was setting up this operation, the shooter on the roof isn't actually shooting.
Okay.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
He's brainwashed. It's blanks. It's something.
Okay.
He thinks he's shooting, but he's not shooting anybody. There's another shooter somewhere else who does actually shoot somebody in the crowd. So you think that there's actually shooting going on. And you could have some sort of explosive device. You could have something on your ear where you go,
or
look,
you
sir,
just grab your ear and cut it real quick with like
I think
a wrestler would
to get the
do.
natural reaction, you would have to have an actual, like, something's going to cut your ear. And you're going to say, sir, this is going to hurt, but it's not going to kill you. You're going to get a little blood everywhere, but trust me, he does flinch. He does go like, God, like something got me. We have the tech, like you could set that up where you have, you see what I'm saying? Where you could have fake shooter, real shooter, fake bullet. And it's like, you could stage that to where it's a psyop. I'm not saying that it was.
No, but I hadn't thought of that because I was thinking more along the lines of like, I mean, I'm not a sniper, but it seems to me even the best sniper would probably say, if the wind blows, I mean, hitting him right on the ear is pretty tough.
You wouldn't risk that.
But I hadn't thought about like, okay, well, if a innocent bystander is shot, real bullets are flying.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you're talking about some device on his ear, I'm picturing Trump like in the brief, like, sir, we're going to have to put this on your ear. It's going to hurt a little bit. And I'm picturing Trump kind of being like, I can handle it. I'm the best.
I could see him doing it too. I could see him being like that.
If you ever,
and here's how you know he could do it. Here's how you know. Go back and watch Trump at the WWE wrestling events. He trained for this. He absolutely trained for it. Like he could. It looks like that. That's what it looks like. He's like running around pretend wrestling and fighting.
Well, he pops
put
up
a little
with
firecracker on his ear and tell him just to like, throw your fist in the air and act tough.
Yeah,
he could totally do it.
Man, all right.
Now,
I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, I know you're not saying that's what happened. It's just like if it were to have happened. This
conspiracy dad in me, as a Trump supporter, I cannot deny that he does not look even slightly afraid of getting shot. And I'm just saying that's your sign, because the only people I think that could do that are people who are literally insane. Like your mind is not working.
Now,
a narcissist can't do that.
What?
A narcissist will talk tough until they get cut, and then they immediately go like, "Oh gosh, like I don't want to die,
off, dude."
You know, like I'm ego, but I'm not going to die over this.
Why do you think it needs to be an MKUltra subject or an MKUltra type subject?
You would just need somebody
to be the trigger man.
You needed a Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
You needed a Sirhan, and you needed a Patsy to be the shooter.
But I guess my question is like, does he need to be hypnotized, or you just need to like grab kind of like how young vulnerable people get wrapped up into cults?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you could just as easily get a CIA operative to just kind of go like, boy, that Trump sure is a bad guy, huh? Sure would be good if somebody took that guy out, right?
Yeah.
So
it could be that. I mean, he doesn't have to be brainwashed, but I think that if it was me running the operation, I would want something pretty fail-proof, something where it's like, this guy doesn't even know what he's doing. He's just going to do what he's told to do, and he's going to climb up on the roof, and he's going to think he's getting off some shots, and then he's going to be dead before anyone can even say anything about it.
Yeah.
Which is morbid, but it's also like, okay, Sirhan,
well,
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Man.
I mean, they've done this before.
Yeah, well, I know we kind of have meandered in and around MKUltra, but this Poisoner in Chief book by Stephen Kinzer gives you a lot of detail into a lot of the like just the horrors of a lot of the testing that they did on like our mental institute patients, prison inmates, soldiers of ours. So like when you sign up to give your body to the government, you didn't realize that's part of what you're agreeing to. But my point is, like, I know, like, when, like, at the very outset of the first episode of this podcast, your point was like, if they would shoot the president in the face on TV
in front of his wife,
kind of all bets are off.
Yeah. So yeah, if you pair that with would they did do that? So would they put a firecracker on Trump's ear and pretend like they shot him? Well, I mean,
they're not blowing his face off.
Yeah,
it's just his ear. And it's not even the whole ear.
I mean, would they shoot innocent civilians? Yeah, well.
Maybe, yeah.
They shot the president.
Mm-hmm.
They shoot an innocent civilian. It's morbid. I'm sorry if it's getting dark, but that's, I don't have an answer. I feel like I'm compelled as conspiracy dad to like call attention to when I feel like there's a conspiracy. And the second shooter thing, I felt like they just needed to reinforce it because it was like the media wasn't picking up on the president almost got his head blown off. Could be wrong about that. But the other side of it is the stories, both of these shooters, it doesn't seem like anyone's trying to stop them.
Yeah.
Like they're just kind of like walking up and like, go shoot the president, you know?
So here's, I'll just be transparent for everyone. I only read the headline that there was a second shooting attempt. I don't know. That's as much as I know. So
he just like camped out. As far as I know, I think he just went out to Trump's golf course and just camped out in the bushes for like 12 hours and waited to shoot him. And security didn't even call it in. It was a bystander who noticed this odd looking guy walking out of the bushes that called the cops on him. So it's like Secret Service didn't catch him.
That is surprising given how much heat the Secret Service just got done taking. Over that first.
You think? That's why it is shocking. And it's either shocking that they're allowing so many security breaches to happen that they're kind of just hanging Trump out there and Trump's the luckiest guy in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That, or maybe there's something else going on, like funny business that we don't know about.
I mean, if I'm just speculating with you, it does seem that the Trump camp was anticipating that they would be going against Biden, and they thought that would be like easy slam dunk. And Harris seems to be picking up more steam than they anticipated. So like, let's just keep these shooting attempts going until we can get those poll numbers back up.
I hope that I'm wrong. And it's just like that idea of don't attribute malice to that which can be explained by incompetence.
Yeah, right.
Like, I hope that that's the case, but I can't let go of the fact that they killed Kennedy, then they killed his brother, and like this long line of, that would be believable if we didn't have a lot of history of, bad activity, to base it. Like, are these people capable of that? Yeah, I think so. And, back to, would they kill your elephant? They would kill your elephant. They did.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that, that's another thing that Bustamante says is like, take into account that, that 80-20 principle, like vast majority of the CIA is just regular bureaucratic admin type people, not like elite strike force spy types that you watch on like the FX show, The Americans or whatever. Which I realize is about Russian spies and may not actually be on FX, but my point is
AMC, I think, actually.
Okay. Yeah. So, there is probably a lot of just incompetence taking place in organizations like the CIA. But when we're studying things like MKUltra and like the genuine malice that is littered throughout that story, the thought occurred to me, like, it seems like there's enough malice in and around that, and like this kind of like greed for like the power grab that the people that are highly motivated to find this truth serum, or that are highly motivated to get something like that accomplished, will suffer through the incompetence. And like, innocent bystanders be damned. Until we get this right, we're just going to keep, suffering those consequences until we get our
break
goal.
A few eggs.
Yeah. So I guess that's my point, is like, you can, I don't know. I mean, it's almost, I don't know if I'm disagreeing with look at incompetence versus malice. I'm thinking it like, as I'm saying it, but like, maybe there's in some people that are ambitious enough to get to certain places of power, maybe they have so much malice that they are willing to like struggle through the incompetence to achieve their ends. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, is there a good book for people to read on? I mean, Chaos by Tom O'Neill is good.
I think
any others?
That Blitzed one by Norman Ohler is kind of a good start. The interview with Norman Ohler on Rogan's what got me thinking about all of this.
What was the other podcast you listened to about it?
Behind the Bastards. And that one I thought was really good in terms of those guys are more like skeptics. So if you kind of want the rebuttal to like what we're
Conspiracy Dad,
like the Conspiracy Dad, and those guys did a lot more reading than us. So yeah, we're gonna
reading's hard.
But and that's partly why I'm so kind of like convinced of like, well, there's a good dose of malice in throughout this story, despite the amount of incompetence that was also involved. One book that they reference in there quite a bit is Poisoner in Chief by Stephen Kinzer. And then another one, if you're interested in MKUltra and kind of things like this in and around it, is the Dulles Brothers book that I just...
Brothers, right?
Yeah, it's called The Brothers. And let me find the author of it real quick, because it's... That's also by Stephen Kinzer. Okay.
So well, he knows his stuff.
He does.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good introduction to MKUltra. Maybe we'll revisit it some more in depth once I've actually finished Chaos. I'm like 3/4 of the way through, so
yeah,
got some more.
Well, I guess
nuggets in there.
What I learned this week, like after I called you about, we gotta kind of like lay this out, and give cliff notes for people. The tale is so sordid and has so many tentacles that shoot off of it. Like that Chaos book, I think of as more of like a Charles Manson book.
Yeah.
So like,
but it is.
And that makes me think of it as more of a Laurel Canyon book.
But it connects you to Laurel Canyon, which connects you to Jared Leto's house and the moon landing faked and all this.
Yeah, so like MKUltra is like a central storyline in and around all this Conspiracy Dad stuff, and that's why probably this conversation was a little bit disjointed.
There's a lot of
It's not
tentacles.
as simple as saying, well, Pearl Harbor happened and we killed the Germans and that was the end of World War II. You know, like there's a lot more to it than that, but at least now you're possibly more confused than you were before we started. So,
all right. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll come back to the next Conspiracy Dad as soon as we get around to it. So cheers.